Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty Roundtable Radio Talk Show.
It's an event at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue that's been never, ever done or seen before. The next question is, have you become a braver angel yet? braverangels.org. Welcome to the show. I'm Sam Bushman. Happy to have you along. I've got a problem with the Pennsylvania Avenue event last weekend, and I mentioned it on the show yesterday. In an event unlike anything ever seen before at Pennsylvania Avenue, you got this Justin Gagey or whatever it is. He basically won in the fight. It was everybody watched from the White House grounds. Thousands of people watched. It was broadcast on TV. It was everywhere. And the reason that I have an issue with it, ladies and gentlemen, is primarily because of the setting. The President of the United States ought not facilitate fights. It sends a bad message to the world, in my humble opinion. And it does so in a way that is provocateur, especially when we're in the middle of war that we're trying to sign peace agreements on. You can say, Sam, come on, it's just a little fun. No harm, no foul. Come on, Sam. I get it, but I also get that, hey, if you want to have martial arts and boxing and in our society, that's fine. People can choose that. I'm for agency and choice as well. But when we talk about the commander-in-chief of the greatest military army in the world, the greatest military force in the world, it's a little different. When nations start to celebrate blood sport, those nations go south. Go look at history. So I don't have a problem necessarily with the fight at all. And I don't really have a problem with boxing or any other sport necessarily. But I have a problem with when we promote it in the nation's capital. It's kind of the key event to celebrate 250 years. Is it 250 years of a fight or 250 years of a peaceful nation where all walks of life get along peacefully? I think it's an open-ended, fair question. Our guest will discuss this with me now and more. His name is David Lapp. He's a co-founder of Braver Angels. He's also the director of the Citizens Commission on Immigration. David has spent the last decade plus helping Americans navigate some of our toughest disagreements. He wants to basically help citizens realize we can disagree, but we can do so kindly and remain neighbors. David, welcome to Liberty Roundtable Live, sir.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
What do you think of my take? I just want to kind of get a thought. If you disagree, that's fine. We can handle that too. But I just feel like it's not necessarily the time or the place, sir.
Yeah, I mean, our nation was founded on conflict. Our founding fathers were, we had the conflict with the mother country, but we also had conflicts among ourselves. I mean, think about the conflict between North and South. Think about just all of the normal kind of partisan conflicts that occurred.
Those who wanted to remain with King George, those who didn't, etc. Right?
That was a big one. But even among the people who fought the American Revolution, there would be big fights. How strong and centralized should the national government be, and how much power should our states have?
That's the Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers, right?
Right. And now the trick is that the story of America is a story of learning to disagree well. And at our best, I think, understanding that there's broadly speaking, there's a conservative impulse, there's a liberal impulse, and this is manifested differently in different times. But I think that fundamentally, America to thrive, we need both temperaments and dispositions. We need conservatives to say, look, let's try to conserve what is best in our tradition. And we need the liberal impulse to say, look, here are our flaws, and here's where we need to innovate. Here's where we need to improve. Here's where we need to change and become the best version of ourselves. So I think fundamentally we need conservatives and liberals. I think that's a good thing. And that the art of our politics is learning how to fight well, learning how to disagree well. Now, what does that look like in terms of should we have a UFC fight on the White House lawn. I'll leave that to others to decide. But for myself, I'm just thinking about how there is an element of our politics in which we want to disagree well. We don't want to try to defeat each other, defeat the other side. I think that's a harmful impulse. But we want to win elections, and we want to learn how to govern ourselves well, and that means having to work together.
One of the things we really want to do is realize that, we might, especially me, I'm probably the most guilty of anyone. I think my side's right, and I think what I think is right. But I got to realize that there's probably things I haven't thought about. There's probably things that I haven't considered. And there's probably points that maybe aren't my important point, but they are somebody else's that have just as much validity as my point of view. And they probably think they're right. And they think, and so on. And the reason I bring this up is some of the founding fathers even backed some people who were completely opposite from themselves. And when some of the citizens asked why, the very point Braver Angels brings up is why. We need all sides of this discussion in the debate. We need to be able to discuss this. Sam can say, I think it's a great thing to have this, fighting, in our society. That's fine. But it shouldn't be on the White House lawn. Somebody else can say, I think it should be on the White House lawn. It's great, Sam. Trump did a celebratory thing. It's kind of like sports, kind of like the Olympics. It brought everybody together. It was awesome. They can have that view, and so on. Each person can have their views, articulate them, and maybe, just maybe, our views might slightly become less narrow, David?
Mm. Yeah, I think about, so I'm the director of the Citizens Commission on Immigration at Braver Angels, and this is a multi-year effort to see what common ground, see what agreement we can find on immigration, bringing together even number of reds and even number of blues in discussions, debates, workshops, bringing together national leaders who disagree on immigration. And, for that, again, you have the two sides are those who emphasize that we need to be more or less restrictive in how many people and who we allow to come to the country, because we need to be thinking about American citizens who are already here and ensuring that the economy is thriving for them and that they're able to thrive in their jobs and in their communities. And on the other hand, we have people who emphasize that the innovation and the newness and the excitement and that immigrants can bring to a country. And this is, you could argue this has been true for our whole lifetime as a country, is that we've always been replenished by immigrants. But we've had to regulate that. We've had, there's been periods where we've had allowed lots of immigration and times where we've been more restricted. But the point is, you have some people who argue that, well, we need to be really attentive to and restrictive, and other people who say, well, we need to be really welcoming to as many people as possible. And I think that's a healthy tension. It's a healthy conflict to have. It's kind of like in a family. There's always, I have, my wife and I, we have 6 children, and there's always a tension between, okay, how active are we in the community and in, things happening outside of our family and outside of the home, and how much do we need to focus on the family and on, being at home and creating a thriving environment for our kids. It's that way with immigration and with conservatives and liberals. So I think that there's a fruitful tension here. Now, that's not to diminish. There are very real moral issues at hand that, for instance, when you think about abortion, that comes into stark relief. You have two sides who are making very strong moral cases.
When it comes to immigration, right? There's a big difference
between
an immigrant and a criminal, right?
Right. And so there are very real moral questions at play, and we shouldn't diminish those. The point that we try to make at Braver Angels is we have something called the Braver Angels Way. And part of it is that, we speak freely and fully without fear, and that we believe that no one is not worth talking to, and that we all have blind spots. Everyone is worth talking to, and everyone has blind spots, including myself. So that means that if I think, oh my goodness, this person, the way they're thinking about immigration, is so they're morally bankrupt. Well, chances are they're coming at it from a perspective that they think has a strong moral foundation. And I would like to try to understand that argument before I just dismiss or stereotype
Amen.
them.
Sure. I've got a couple of things to say. Braver Angels, ladies and gentlemen, has grown into one of the largest grassroots organizations across the country, uniting hearts and minds. And when we say we're united, that doesn't mean that we agree. It just means we agree to disagree agreeably. And we realize that, hey, we can work through this together. We don't need to be enemies. We can remain friends. We'll talk more with David Lapp in seconds. BraverAngels.org. Check out their convention coming up next week. It starts. I'll be there. Liberty Roundtable live.
What does it mean to be an American? 250 years ago, our founders pledged to each other their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor in pursuit of liberty and self-government. Now, on America's 250th anniversary, you're invited to join fellow citizens in Philadelphia for a historic gathering dedicated to renewing that spirit. From June 25th through June 28th, 2026, Braver Angels presents its national convention. This is more than a convention, it's a call to courageous citizenship. Join Americans from every background and walk of life as we learn to listen better, engage respectfully, build trust across differences, and strengthen the bonds that hold our nation together. Whether you're concerned about the future of our country or simply looking for ways to make a positive difference, this event is for you. Register today at braverangels.org/convention.
Sheriff Mack, standing tall, still answering freedom's call, a badge of promise, a constitutional track history.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Sheriff Mack's usually on with us on Tuesdays. Is why the liner for Sheriff Richard Mack, he's not with us today. He's traveling and on some other broadcasts. It's a crazy summer. We're all traveling and going everywhere, all over the place, ladies and gentlemen. David Lapp with me, though. We're talking about Braver Angels. He's the director of the Citizens Commission on Immigration, braverangels.org. David spent the last decade working on bringing people together, helping people understand one another. When I grew up, they told me you had 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them proportionately, Sam. And then I became a talk show host, and that went out the window. But I got to repent. I can do this. I can listen more, right? Braver Angels has grown into one of the largest organizations, grassroots organizations across the country. Yeah, they got partisan divide. That's the problem. We want to bring it together, though, with workshops and ideas and discussions. And they're working in every state already, ladies and gentlemen. They're growing fast because people love this concept of we can agree to disagree agreeably. Braver Angels renews the American promise in Philadelphia for the nation's 250, 1776 to 2026. It's their convention. We are not enemies, but friends. We'll get to that quote coming up from Abraham Lincoln as well. But a couple of things, David, that I want to bring up to your attention. I wrote an immigration plan, believe it or not, because I just felt like, you know what, I can't get on the radio and just talk and complain and be on one side or the other and not have a plan. People are like, well, what's your plan, Sam? And I'm like, blah, blah, blah. No, I got to come up with one. So I wrote an immigration plan. It's called the Justice and Mercy American Immigration Plan. And the reason it's called Justice and Mercy is because, you know, we think of the Savior Jesus Christ, and he was all about justice and mercy and tempering those perfectly. And the idea is if you're a criminal, you need hardcore justice. Nobody should disagree with that. On the other hand, if you want to have a better life, whether you're here illegally or not, and you came here and your goal is to really seek peace and a better life and safety for your wife or your family, your children, how do you blame somebody for that, right? Or if you came here as maybe a DACA, you know, you came here as a little kid, all you really know is English, maybe a teeny bit of Spanish at best or whatever, or even if you know 2 languages, but hey, your whole home, your adult life or remembered life is pretty much America. You know, where do you go? It's your home. It's all you knew. And it's not your fault that you came here, however you got here, right? And so what we need to do is put these people into kind of buckets and then case by case work through those buckets. And the criminals on one end are easy. The people who came here to no fault of their own are easy. And then we just kind of work our way to the middle case by case and say, hey, how do we be honest with justice and mercy? And how do we vet and find out if you're a criminal? Look, nobody, even immigrants who are legally here or illegally here, they don't want the criminals here. Many times that's why they left their countries, for safety. And so anyway, my plan really kind of relates to all that. And what are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's fascinating that you mentioned, call it the Justice and Mercy Plan. You know, there was a So we have what we call a common ground workshop, where you get even number, you got 7 reds, 7 blues, and they spend 5 hours in person hearing each other's stories and perspectives, what's at the heart of the immigration issue for you, and then seeing what agreement they can find on immigration. And usually they end up with about 20 to 30 unanimous points of agreement in order for it to be considered a point of agreement in our workshop.
Not with the media peddling the divide, they won't. But yes, you're correct. If they get together, huh?
So I'll tell you, the reason I mention that is because at a Common Ground workshop in Long Island, New York, one of the values that they had unanimous agreement on was balancing justice and mercy in our immigration system. And then I'll give you a couple of examples of what, for them, what this looked like in terms of policies that they were able to find agreement on. Okay. First was we got to make sure that we're holding employers accountable for hiring undocumented immigrants and instituting what's known as E-Verify for all employers. To make E-Verify basically verifies that the person is authorized to work in the United States. About half of employers use it now. The idea is they thought, these reds and blues, let's make it universal. That's one thing. Second thing, okay, with that in place, let's think about what we can do about the unauthorized immigrants who are here, in many cases who came, for many reasons, but in many times we kind of, winked and looked the other way, as they crossed the border. So how should we think about that? We have
some culpability and responsibility there too, right?
I would say we do, and the people in the workshop, what they came up with is they negotiated. I mean, some people came into the workshop saying, you know what, we need to give everybody who's here as an unauthorized immigrant, we need to give them a path to citizenship. Others came into the workshop saying, everybody who's an illegal immigrant, they need to be deported. Even people who are dreamers. Amazingly, they were able to find agreement on a path to citizenship for people who have been here 10 plus years, and also getting the DACA people, giving them path to making that permanent. So, and then they said secure the border as a third. So there's like the trilogy of policies there where they felt like they were all able to agree on in terms of, balancing justice and mercy. And the point I want to make there is that, there's some of those policies are things that, like E-Verify and holding employers accountable. That's something that conservatives tend to emphasize more. Giving a path to citizenship to some of the people who have been here for a long time, that's something that liberals tend to emphasize more. But they found, and secure the border, amazingly, that's something that both sides were able to really agree on, despite some objections, but that they were able to find agreement on. But the point is, it's like in these workshops, it's like a little Congress where ordinary citizens come together to deliberate and to say, yeah, what can we do about this challenge and how could we address it in a good way? And that's what they came up with.
Part of my plan also includes things like this. If you can ensure that you have been here for a while and you don't have a criminal history, that's a huge, in my mind, vote towards the mercy side of the discussion. If you've got an employer that can verify for you, in other words, I know that the E-Verify is to verify if somebody's here legally or if they have a right to work or not, kind of a thing. But I'm talking about verify the other direction, where we say, hey, listen, I'm an employer and I've got this illegal working for me. Don't, you got to let me surface this without, calling me a bad guy here, or else I won't surface it. You got to give me a chance. But I'm going to tell you this immigrant here over here, Juan, or whatever his name is, or she, they're a good person. They've been with me for 8 years. They're a solid employee. They've built a home. They've got a family. They're investing in America the best way they know how. And I will not only vouch for them, but I will make sure that they've got a stability here. I'll sponsor them. And now you're putting together ways to say, hey, they're not a drag on the system. We're vetting them to know they're not a criminal or have a greater belief they're not a criminal. They've got a character witness. They've got all these things up and down the line. Anyway, all I'm saying is there's all kinds of ways that we can surface this. We can do what's called a no-blame autopsy. There's a military guy who wrote a book about business, and he calls it a no-blame autopsy. And what he basically says is, listen, when something goes wrong at work, first off, it's called extreme ownership. If I'm going to own it, I can't just blame it on my employee. If something goes wrong, I'll take the blame. It's my fault. It's on my watch. Okay. Secondly, then let's dig into this thing, find out what went wrong and correct it, but let's not blame people. Okay, let's just look at the facts and say, what do we need to do to bring this forward going the right direction, if you will. It's called a no-blame autopsy. Anyway, I bring that up because we could do this with immigration. I don't care if we look the other way. I don't care if Congress didn't have great laws. I don't care if the border leaked, like whatever the case may be. I'm saying at this point, hey, Tina's over here, and she's in no man's land. She's in America, and she doesn't have a way forward, or employer A or B, whoever the case, whatever their reference point is. And we need to give them a chance to surface this and move forward in productive ways that doesn't place blame, doesn't put people in fear, doesn't divide families, but yet can work towards justice and mercy. There's a way. I'm convinced.
There is
David,
a way.
there's a way.
There is a way. I'll give you another example. The example that I gave you from Long Island, that's just one example. There have been more than 40 Common Ground workshops bringing these 7 reds and 7 blues together across the country. And then, oh, by the way, what happens next after they meet in a common, those people in Long Island, what they did then is they took their points of agreement and met with their local member of Congress, Congressman Tom Suozzi, a Democrat, and they said, hey, here's the conversation we had. Here's where we were able to find agreement. This is what the conversation was like. We'd love to hear your thoughts about this. And they had an hour and 45-minute conversation. And this is now a regular thing that we're doing, where we've engaged in about an even number of Republican and Democratic members of Congress, where those reds and blues from the Common Ground workshop are meeting with their local member of Congress to say, hey, look, we met, we found what we think are some practical ideas for addressing this. And we think that you, as our member of Congress, should be doing the same kind of work in Congress to find solutions to this challenge.
What a blessing that is, ladies and gentlemen. David Lapp, my guest. I consider him an American hero. He's one of the co-founders of Braver Angels, and he spent the last decade helping Americans understand that we can work through this. We can find common ground. We can stand our ground and find common ground, believe it or not. You don't have to give up your beliefs.
An important point that needs to be made, Sam, is that the work of civil discourse is not about compromising your core convictions. It's about speaking freely and fully without fear about your convictions, listening to others and their convictions, and then seeing where the agreement is and having a better understanding of where we cannot agree, but having accurate disagreement is important as well.
And as we have accurate disagreement, we start to realize, though, when you lay out the details, instead of just disagreeing and then making it personal or whatever happens, when you document accurate disagreement, you can find ways that you might agree, though. People can look at those details of accurate disagreement and say, hey, you know what? This doesn't work because of that, but this, would you agree to that? And it finds ways forward. Some would call it compromise. I might call it civil action for solutions, ladies and gentlemen. They're having their convention, and I'm going. It's going to be in Philadelphia, braverangels.org. It's the 26th convention, ladies and gentlemen. You got to stand your ground. I'm Sam Bushman. I've got David Lapp with me. He's going to continue. We're going to talk more about immigration because I got some friends doing a great project David needs to know about. We'll do it all in seconds. I'm Sam Bushman. You're watching and listening to Liberty Roundtable Live. Spread the word, share the love, and God save our constitutional republic.
But it's worth it when you try. Yeah, it's worth it when you try.
One of the most exciting things and energizing things we do at Braver Angels is our national convention. And this year, as we celebrate America's 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, we're going to be in Philadelphia from June 25th through 28th, all engaging in practicing courageous citizenship. 1,000 Americans from across the country, equal representation across the ideological spectrum.
I've sat in multiple rooms where I would have not expected the conversation to move so gracefully.
It was just so nice to be around so many wonderful fellow Americans who really care about our country.
It was life-changing. I keep thinking about what I'm going to tell people back home, and it's like you just had to be there.
Courageous citizenship doesn't happen in theory. The system we've inherited in the United States of America is under strain. This moment calls us to own our role in the great American experiment. As we gather there, we're going to the very place that the framers of the great American experiment hashed through it in the same way. We need your view. We need your representation of your people, your community, your ideas. Renewal happens together. Come join us in Philadelphia, June 25th through 28th this summer. If you haven't signed up to be a delegate yet, do that today and be a part of renewing the pledge.
They do want to hear one another.
I feel really happy and uplifted and inspired.
I'm leaving this place with a sense of grace and hope for our future and our nation.
You have an opportunity to own your part in the American experiment. This moment calls us. This work matters, and you can be a part of it today.
We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Abraham Lincoln, 1861. We'll get to that coming up. Braver Angels has grown into one of the largest grassroots organizations in the country, dedicated to bridging partisan divides. Workshops, debates, training programs, all 50 states and more, and their conventions coming up in Philadelphia, celebrating 1776 to 2026. Braver Angels renews the American promise in Philadelphia, ladies and gentlemen, just ahead of my birthday, the 4th of July. How do you like that? It's coming up the 25th through the 28th of June. I'll be there in Philadelphia. Hope you can join us as well, braverangels.org, to learn more. David Lapp with us, one of the co-founders of Braver Angels. He's the director of the Citizens Commission on Immigration. And I really like that topic. It's a very controversial topic, but it doesn't have to be. And I put together a justice and mercy plan, as we've talked about earlier in the broadcast, but I want to focus on some friends of mine who are doing a marvelous work as well. It's a group called lovingliberty.net, and they have some people there that are putting together an immigrant talk show, believe it or not. It's a TV series, and the design or the goal is to say, hey, if you want to know what's right about America, ask an immigrant. And Ask an Immigrant's the name of the show. And their goal is to say, you know what? These people don't just take America for granted. They've been other places and seen how it works around the world. And they're like, man, America's this blessed, wonderful place. And so the show basically goes and learns about their culture a little bit, about their food, about their, some of the historical landmarks in their country, some incredible details about what's happening from where these people come from. But then how they got here, why they're here, what they love about America, what the contrast they see is. It's not all political. It's cultural. It makes things personal where you understand these people to where, hey, they're not just some different color enemy or whatever you want to frame it as. They're God's children too. They're people. And they matter, and their hearts and their hopes and their dreams can be shared, where we understand their stories and their celebratory viewpoints and their gratitude for the American way and more. And it's called Ask an Immigrant. And so it's, if you want to know what's wrong with America, ask an immigrant. If you want to learn their stories and why they're here, ask them, because many of them have incredible stories, David.
Yes. What I was talking about earlier about this Long Island workshop where they were able to find some points of agreement. One of the people that she's the blue co-chair of the Braver Angels Long Island Alliance. So each Braver Angels local chapter, what we call an alliance, has a red co-chair and a blue co-chair. Herb Lapp is a retired history teacher, conservative. He's the red co-chair. Swati Srivastava, she is an immigrant from India, came here on an H-1B visa, stayed, and she is the blue co-chair of the alliance. I bring her up because she is, when she makes her case for why why there should be a path to citizenship for unauthorized immigrants, for at least some unauthorized immigrants who are living here, it's because she believes that if you are here in the country, we want you to be acting as full citizens who see yourself as a full participant in the American project. And for her herself, Swati, she is extraordinarily grateful for America. She came from, developing part of India, and she has found a lot of opportunity in America, and she loves this country. When you look at her email profile picture, she's got an American flag, wrapped behind her, and she loves America as much as anyone that I know. And actually part of her idea is, if you've been here for 10 plus years, this is where they were able to find agreement on that number. The different people will find different points there. But what her idea is, if you've been here for 10 plus years, and then you would have 3 years to, ensure that they know English and to participate in civics classes.
Yeah,
and then they would
understand the American value, and then you're ready to be a part of that, right?
You're ready to be a part of that, and then you would have an opportunity to become a citizen. Now, again, that's just one idea that's out there, but they were able to find some agreement on that. And the point to emphasize there is that I think the point here is that you mentioned this earlier, and I think it's really true, is that for some of our most difficult and knotty, thorny conflicts, there is a path forward. There is a way forward. The way to do that, I would say, is not by Republicans saying, okay, we just need to defeat Democrats and win win Congress, win the White House, and then we're going to be able to do what we want to do. Or by Democrats, vice versa, Democrats saying, we just need to defeat the Republicans, and then finally we can find the way forward. I don't think that's it, because the reality is we're about half and half, and we're probably going to be that way for a long time.
What if we jettison the red and blue way and find the American way? What's best for America, David? What's best for America? Immigrants bring talent, they bring money, they bring skill sets, they bring different viewpoints, they bring a lot to America, and let's not jettison that reality either. Let's say, hey, what is best for America? And what is best for America? Look, bringing in criminals is not best for America. No one will say that. Okay,
right, and there's broad agreement about that, and citizens are finding that that agreement. Like, yes, absolutely, we should deport people with violent criminal records and be ensuring that we have a secure border so that those kind of people are not able to pass through.
Now, a little kid that's hungry that steals some food is not a criminal. They're hungry. There's a big difference.
Right.
Violent criminal activity, we need to learn that we can't just say, oh, they're a criminal because they're here. They crossed this line, this border, so they're a criminal. They're a bad guy. I get that they've done something illegal, but they're not a criminal. And I know that's, Tom Homan and company might disagree with me on that. And I back Tom Homan, a lot of what he's trying to accomplish. But I think what we need to do is find a way forward that brings people together with hope and trust and confidence that we'll have justice and mercy, that we will do it the American way. And the founding fathers, for example, put you had to be a certain age to be president, you had to be a certain age to be a congressperson or whatever, senator, and they wanted you to be in the country for a certain amount of time too, because they wanted you to understand the dream.
That's right. They wanted you to understand the dream. And I got to tell you a story, and it relates to our upcoming Braver Angels convention that I know you wanted to go into. So the co-chairs of this Braver Angels convention in Philadelphia next week, a remarkable story here, Sam. So in the 2000s, listeners might recall the Gang of Eight, the so-called Gang of Eight bill. That was a big, comprehensive immigration bill. Well, so Jim Robb is a Braver Angels volunteer. He's been working on immigration for a long time. He's a conservative, and he was in the 2000s fighting this Gang of Eight bill, and he and his organization were a big part of the reason why that legislation failed. On the other side is Diego Sanchez. He came here as a child with his parents, so he's a DACA kid. He actually worked with other college kids when he did not have, before there was DACA, to advocate for DACA. And they met with President Obama. They met with before Trump was president, they met with Trump in Trump Tower to talk about their stories. So while Jim Robb was fighting, these things that Diego was advocating for, it. Now, here's the thing, Sam. Diego and Jim, they met about 2 years ago at a Braver Angels convened event. They were sitting next to each other. They traded business cards. And they said, let's get to know one another. Let's hear each other's stories, and let's see if there's any agreement we can find. They became leaders of our Citizens Commission on Immigration. They're part of the leadership team, and they have been working to convene the grassroots workshops. They've been working to convene what we call the Immigration Policy Roundtable, which is a group of about 24 national immigration leaders like themselves, from conservative to liberal to in the center. And they're finding points of agreement. And they are they're the co-chairs of this year's convention. They've become great friends and colleagues. And they still have really, important points of difference in immigration. They're not just like, I'm not sure that either one of them has fundamentally changed how they view immigration, but they have learned that there is significant overlap, and that they can figure some things out by working together.
And ladies and gentlemen, again, what I want is what's best for America. Okay, if we get rid of all the people that work on farms, we're in trouble, folks. We just are. Acknowledge that reality. We're in big trouble. So how do we bring this issue forward? How do we let all boats rise together? How do we come out with a win-win-win idea? We can do it, folks. All right, David Lapp is with me, and he is with Braver Angels. He's one of the co-founders, and for the last 10 years, he's been working on this stuff. I commend him for his work. We're not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Abraham Lincoln, ladies and gentlemen. When we come back, I want to talk more about this and solutions. They've got a convention coming up. I'm going to be there. Hope you'll be there as well. BraverAngels.org.
What does it mean to be an American? 250 years ago, our founders pledged to each other their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor in pursuit of liberty and self-government. Now, on America's 250th anniversary, you're invited to join fellow citizens in Philadelphia for a historic gathering dedicated to renewing that spirit. From June 25th through June 28th, 2026, Braver Angels presents its national convention. This is more than a convention, it's a call to courageous citizenship. Join Americans from every background and walk of life as we learn to listen better, engage respectfully, build trust across differences, and strengthen the bonds that hold our nation together. Whether you're concerned about the future of our country or simply looking for ways to make a positive difference, this event is for you. Register today at braverangels.org/convention.
And history will not forget Braver Angels standing together for the sacred cause of liberty. Ladies and gentlemen, it all comes down to agency. How are you going to choose to behave? How are you going to treat those around you? Love your God and love your neighbors, kind of my top two. And so we got to work on that, ladies and gentlemen. It's important. We're talking to David Lapp about the convention coming up for braverangels.org. It's coming up the 25th through the 28th in Philadelphia. It's going to be in a university, right?
So we got Temple University in Philadelphia on America's 250th anniversary.
All right. And what's going to happen? There's going to be a hall with a bunch of different booths where people can kind of represent what they believe in. You're one of the unique groups that are going to have liberals and conservatives in the halls together, right?
Right. So at the Braver Angels Convention, there will be an about even number of red and blue delegates and about 20% of delegates who don't lean either way. And we're going to be debating, discussing the issues, including immigration. We're going to be hearing from some inspiring speakers. For instance, one of the things, there's a big debate. A Braver Angels debate is one in which you're not trying to defeat the other side. It's a collective search for wisdom and the truth of the issue. And so there's going to be a debate between four immigration leaders, two who lean conservative, two who lean liberal. The resolution is on resolved. We need immigrants to fill jobs in the U.S. We'll have some people who are taking the argument for that and some people who are taking the argument the other way. And we'll see, what emerges. There's other sessions in which delegates can participate as participants in a common ground workshop, or they can participate in debates. We'll hear from some of these leaders who are on the Immigration Policy Roundtable, national leaders who are finding agreement on immigration, if you want to learn about how an initiative called Citizen-Led Solutions, which is all about challenges that people see in their communities, and then they want to work together across political difference to find solutions for those local challenges. Citizen-Led Solutions. It's a Braver Angels initiative. You can learn about how you can get involved with that. You can learn about how you can get involved or start a Braver Angels Alliance in your community, and taking action at the local level to address our problems and practice courageous citizenship.
All right. One of the things that I find interesting about Braver Angels, and one of the things that really made me want to be part of it, made me want to get involved, and made me want to promote it, attend your convention and everything else, is this idea that, most people believe for us to agree, David, I've got to compromise and jettison some of my beliefs, jettison who I am or what my core is. I got to put that on the altar of getting along. And that, I believe, is an absolute misnomer. You guys stand tall and say, no, you don't have to do that, Sam. It's how you deliver it that's really the discussion. It's whether you have an open mind to allow other people to have their views and possibly consider them. When you do that, Sam, you become part of the solution, even if you hold on to your views. It's okay for you to stand tall. It's okay for you to stand your ground as you see it. But what you've got to be willing to do is have an open mind and listen to others and give them a chance and not hold it against them if they don't come your way. That's really the key to Braver Angels, right?
Absolutely. And, honestly, it's kind of boring if we'd all just try to meet in the middle, in the center, because then, there's a way in which, look, I'm from the Old Order Amish in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. The older Amish are a very
By the way,
distinct...
the Bushman family's all from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, too, just so you know.
Oh, my goodness. Well, we got to talk about that connection, Sam. The Old Order Amish, of course, are one of our most distinctive communities in America.
And impressive, just I might add.
And impressive, right. And we have found the way, we have found the way in our big pluralistic country of ours for the Amish to be able to be fully themselves and fully a part of the American project in their own way.
Yeah,
and there's been conflict,
study,
like there was, as recently as I think it was 1968, there was the Wisconsin v. Yoder Supreme Court case where the state of Wisconsin wanted to require Amish to send their kids to high school. And the Amish said, no, we only want to send them to 8th grade. And then we want them to go work on the farms and so forth. Well, the Amish won that case. And that was a case study in which America, we made some accommodations to say, okay, how can we be as pluralistic of a country as possible while yet preserving our American identity? And so the point here is that I mention that because the Amish are fully Amish and they are themselves, and we want the Amish to be themselves. And I think that's how we should think about it politically as well. We want people who are strongly conservative, people who are strongly liberal and coming from their own experiences to speak freely and fully without fear about their convictions. And we want to do it peacefully. We want to do it in a way in which we're honoring the dignity of each other. And we're going to do it robustly, right? We're not going to hold back on the disagreements. So we're going to argue powerfully with each other, but in a way that says,
we also want to make sure, David, when you disagree, let's say you have a hard belief and let's say that you meet with us over time in whatever group you're in, and you kind of realize that, maybe your hardcore stance isn't as right as you thought it was. Maybe you've broadened your horizons a little bit, and you kind of go, wow, you know what? Now, the next problem is what people do is they dig in. They don't want to admit it. They don't dare capitulate or dare. But at Braver Angels, it's okay to go, you know what? I'm going to soften on this a little bit because I see something I didn't understand before. These people aren't the bad people I thought they were. You know what? We've broke bread together. We've talked. We've spent time together. And I have tremendous respect for this person. And they think this, and they've given legitimate reasons why they believe what they believe in. And so, you know what? I'm kind of a softened person on this or that topic. And it's because of my friendships and because of who I know. And they're not the bad guys anymore. There's only you and me. There's no good guys. There's no bad guys. There's only you and me, and we just disagree. It's like a song from the 70s. I'm an old guy. But I'm just saying, at Brave Angels, you can do that, right?
Absolutely. And it happens all the time. You know, when two people, different political mindsets encounter each other. I'll give you an example. So at one of our first Brave Angels events, Greg Smith, he was a former cop, working class guy, a strong Trump supporter. He was sitting next to Kuyar Mustashfi, who's an Iranian immigrant, engineer, and of course was very much opposed to Trump and had voted for, this is back in 2016, had voted for Clinton. They were sitting next to each other, and the war in Iraq is still going on, and Greg is thinking about Islamic-inspired, he's thinking about terrorism in the Middle East. And so he says to Kuyar, knowing that Kuyar is a Muslim, he said, Kuyar, tell me about your religion and how you think about all the terrorism that I'm seeing happening in the Middle East. And Kuyar says, well, you know what? My religion has been hijacked. And Greg said, well, mine has too. He's an evangelical Christian, and he feels like, people wrongly view evangelical Christians. Sure. And he says, mine has too. The two of them started this wonderful conversation. It ended with Greg saying this, hey, Kuyar, I'll attend a mosque with you to better understand your religion and tradition. You attend my Christian church with me so you can better understand where I'm coming from. We're not trying to convert each other here. We're trying to better understand each other and to see where each other is coming from. And they did it. And they did it. And they developed this years-long friendship where, Greg, was sometimes having a hard time understanding where Democrats are coming up on something. He'd call Kuyar and say, Kuyar, help me make sense of this, and Kuyar would do the opposite. So that kind of friendship, that kind of civic friendship is, I think, what our country needs.
Amen. I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Some nickname us the Mormons. And I've got a deal with a Catholic friend of mine. And here's the deal. We don't know who's right for sure. He thinks I'm not right, and I think he's not right. But we agree to agree that, you know what? After we both die, if the Catholics are right, I'm joining. And if the Mormons are right, he's joining. What do you think of that?
I think that's the way to go. I think charity.
And if neither of us are right, we're in trouble.
And neither of us are right, we're in trouble. Well, yeah, I think that's the way to go. You found the path forward.
Anyway, there you have it. I just thought that was really important, ladies and gentlemen, to focus on. They always say don't talk about religion and politics at the dinner table. With Braver Angels, you can learn to talk about any of those issues, finances, politics, religion, at the kitchen table, the dinner table, because you'll learn to do it in a way that's productive. You'll learn to do it in ways that are mutually beneficial, in ways that bring people together, not divide. That's why Braver Angels has grown into one of the largest organizations in the country at all 50 states. To learn more, to join their convention, or if you can't make the convention, you're going to have some of the speeches online where people can watch too, right?
It will be, on our Braver Angels YouTube channel, and some of it will be covered by C-SPAN as well. They'll be covering some of the sessions.
Let's go. All right, David Lapp, ladies and gentlemen, co-founder. How did you get together really quick with some of these people to co-found this and get this cranked up? How did it change from an idea to reality?
David Blankenhorn is the founding president. Bill Doherty, fellow co-founder, and we started Braver Angels. It was right after the 2016 election, days afterward. David Blankenhorn already had the idea for the organization. He said, hey, let's bring together 10 people who just voted for Trump, 10 people who just voted for Clinton, and let's spend a weekend together. And we did.
That's the genesis, ladies and gentlemen. Braver Angels is the result. braverangels.org. And I'm delighted to be part of it. I'm going to the convention. I will be reporting from there and a whole lot more. So thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. If we can bring peace to the nation, if we can bring people together, even if you're not 100% united, at least if you're civil. By the way, my book's almost done, A Clarion Call for Civility, so keep an eye out for that as well, ladies and gentlemen. We got a lot cooking. Bright minds think alike, and we're on the same page. We'd like you to join us. braverangels.org to learn more. I'm Sam Bushman. Thank you, David. God save our grand old republic.